What's up, everyone? Welcome back to episode 3 of Wrestlers Who Never Won the WWE Championship, but totally should have.
That's right. On the last segment, we covered Glenn's all-time favorite, Razor Ramon.
Not all-time favorite, but
pretty close to it.
He's up there.
But on this one, we're covering one is actually one of my all-time favorites and one of the all-time favorites in best heels ever. So which great heel are we talking about here? It is
the $1 Million Man, Ted Dibiase.
That is correct. He has actually had quite an accomplished resume before, during, and after WWE that a lot of you may not have known about.
Now, one thing I want to point out here that I brought up when we were talking about this before recording it is little beknownst to a lot of people is Ted Dibiase actually was in the WWF back in 1979 when Vince Sr. was still running the company, and he was even what was a short-lived WWF North American champion, which he ended up losing that belt to Pat Patterson.
And that became the Intercontinental title through a series of tournaments that Pat Patterson claims to have won. So Ted DiBiase did have a title in 1979, but not the big title, and obviously never the big title during his time here. Then from the 1980 to 1987, he competed mostly in Japan and NWA, National Wrestling Alliance.
Yeah, and coming back to WWE back in 1987 is where the $1 Million Man gimmick was born, where Ted DiBiase was this rich, smug guy, and he would basically offer money to anyone, whether it be little kids or just poor people.
The basketball one's my favorite. That's my all-time favorite one.
He had things such as dribbling a basketball 100 times, but heelish as he was, when the kid would get to like 99, he would swat the ball away and no money for you.
He's such a great heel. And he had Virgil there. It wasn't quite slavery, but it was pretty close. Indentured servitude, Virgil. And so his heel gimmick of 1988 was the best heel gimmick of that year by far. And it was just brilliantly done.
And one thing, too, that made his heel gimmick really... what I liked about it is the fact that when he used to beat his opponents, he would stuff money down their throat before walking off, and it's kind of cool. It made it look like he kind of paid the guys off to lose also.
And now the other thing about it is he's also not just a great heel, he's one of the best technical wrestlers of that time as well.
Yes.
He was, in my opinion, one of the 2 or 3 best technicians of the Hogan era, because Hogan was not.
Yeah, and it's funny because right from the get-go, DiBiase was always in basically the title picture, but for whatever reason, he just could never win the big one, which ended up leading to him creating his own title belt, the $1 Million Championship, which we still see on TV from time to time today.
Before we get to that one, though, the reason why is there was a controversial 1988, right before WrestleMania 4 happened, where Andre beat Hulk Hogan and won the title and then tried to sell it off to DiBiase. So DiBiase
handed it to him.
Technically had the title belt in his possession for 3 or 4 days and then wound up being never counted on that list.
Yeah, but apparently it's because you can't buy the title.
Who knew? Apparently you can in today's world. And then that led to WrestleMania 4, the greatest tournament of all time in theory.
Which the final match was Ted DiBiase versus Randy Savage.
Yes, and DiBiase would basically cheat his way there, buy people out, get double DQs, where Savage worked his butt off, and a great heel comeuppance story, because DiBiase knew how to take the heel comeuppance stories.
But yet again, at the end of that match, the spotlight was all on Hulk Hogan.
Yes, that also happened.
Who had a double DQ, right, in his match with Andre, which threw him out of the tournament in, like, round 1.
Yes.
No,
round 2.
Okay. Yeah, because they both had a first-round bye.
Yes, and then DiBiase only had to face 2 other opponents. He had 2 other matches, but he had a long time to wait while Savage had to hurry and rush into his matches.
Yeah, and, DiBiase totally, for whatever means, should have had the belt at least once, because his gimmick was so over at the time. I mean...
Yeah. Well, in case you're wondering, a lot of the people on this list are from the late 80s, early 90s, I don't want to blame Hogan, but we're going to blame Hogan.
Hogan, Warrior,
yeah.
But, like, Ted DiBiase, he's a second-generation superstar. His father was a wrestler. I think Iron Mike DiBiase was his name.
Yes.
And his son was a wrestler, and even his son had a lot of potential and just was always regulated to being under Randy Orton.
He had the skill and not the talent there. But with DiBiase, after about 90-91, his pure
career.
Well, no, he was still wrestling till 94 actively.
Okay.
But he changed his style from being just the pure evil guy to working as a group evil with IRS, Erwin R.
Money Inc. And then, let's not forget the infamous SummerSlam 1994 main event with The Undertaker.
Oh, yeah. Wait, what?
Yeah,
Oh, that's right. Oh, he was part... I forgot. The Undertaker. That's
So,
when he started going into his managerial phase, another great phase in his career.
Let's bring that up real quick, because 1990 Survivor Series, Dibiase on his team, which was basically the Money Inc. team.
Yes.
He was the one that debuted The Undertaker and brought him out as the mystery partner on his team.
Look at the size of that hammer.
Yeah, and
that's a classic one.
So when that feud happened and when DiBiase stopped wrestling, Paul Bearer was already with The Undertaker, and Undertaker had been basically buried alive by Yokozuna after a casket match.
Oh yeah, when like 30 people covered him in the casket.
Which I think was at Rumble of that year.
Yes, and Rumble 94?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ted DiBiase had kept saying that, he was going to bring back The Undertaker that he debuted 4 years earlier.
Yes.
And
that was the only one of 2 Manias Taker did not appear in. I remember now. So then he came back. You're right. He came back in SummerSlam.
So I mean, that's already transitioning Ted DiBiase past what was his wrestling prime, and then Ted DiBiase was also the original manager for Stone Cold Steve Austin,
the Ringmaster.
The Ringmaster when he came in.
Yeah, so he had a great. So that's the thing. He had a great in-ring career acumen and a great managerial acumen as well. And then he went like everyone else did to WCW in '96.
And he became. They called him Billionaire Ted at first.
Well, of course they can't call him actual $1 Million Man.
Yeah, but no, it was a pun because Ted Turner running WCW.
I get it now.
Yeah, and he was basically the financer for the NWO behind the scenes. And then they also ended up bringing in Virgil to the NWO not too long after, because wherever DiBiase goes, Virgil has to follow.
Even if they did face each other at WrestleMania 7. But
which Virgil won.
Yes. Yeah. All thanks to Roddy Piper and another crazy scheme. Piper is also one of those crazy ones.
I mean, that was the thing, is after the 80s basically fizzled out, when DiBiase, I guess, knew his in-ring career was winding down, because he also, I think, had back injuries, right?
Shocking neck and back injuries.
Yeah, everyone, I guess, that retired from the late 80s to the early 90s all had these weird back injuries. It might have been,
it's a style.
It could have also been the mats were a lot harder, too.
That's true. I will say, of all the wrestlers that you go back and watch matches, DiBiase is one of the few where you really do enjoy his matches today, watching from future. Like, again, we love Hogan here, but Hogan's matches don't hold up.
Yeah, Ted DiBiase was definitely a guy who, I mean, he was one of the greatest talkers on the mic, too, of the late 80s.
Of course. That heel gimmick is the best heel gimmick. I call it the best heel gimmick of 1988. I remain steadfast in that, for that.
He was what Donald Trump would model himself after.
Moving on.
No, because even you look at it, funny stuff is like the tournament where he was in the main event. Where was that held?
Nowhere. It never happened. It was held nowhere. Moving on.
Ted DiBiase.
Yeah.
He had the $1 Million Dream, which was basically like a standing. It was like a Cobra Clutch to an extent.
It was It was kind of like a.
Kind of was a Cobra Clutch when you think about it.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, he invented it. It was unique. It was a unique.
No, Cobra Clutch was Sergeant
the
Slaughter.
The standing Cobra Clutch.
Yeah, but Slaughter was doing this Cobra Clutch.
I'm sitting down. Oh, you're right. My bad. I'm completely thinking of
the Camel Clutch.
Camel Clutch.
Yeah, no. So he was a standing Cobra Clutch, which he called the $1 Million Dream. Which great, use of his whole gimmick to make someone fall asleep, putting him in a dream by the $1 Million Man.
He was a larger-than-life heel, and the fact that he never won the WWE title is kind of shocking in a world where heels make great champions.
Yes, and now Ted DiBiase is a pastor, I believe.
I think I heard something about that now.
He's given his life to the Lord.
Lordy.
Which, I mean, he still makes occasional appearances today on TV, and when his music hits, he's still that gimmick that it's timeless.
Yeah, he's
a classic.
He's an innovator. That's something that I like to think about Ted DiBiase.
Because, I mean, you look at it, at the time, no one was a rich guy in wrestling.
Hogan.
No, but Hogan didn't make himself rich.
The pseudo money. Well, I don't think Ted DiBiase actually had millions of dollars in his repertoire. Although eventually he did.
Look at it. All those wrestlings he did, he might have just saved up.
JBL had millions because JBL started going into.
Well, actually, even look at JBL's gimmick. What he became was sort of Ted DiBiase's evolution.
He's an influence of all those people that, like, for example, there are people that are like Gorgeous George, who came in being flamboyant, and there's people like DiBiase who came in just being rich jerks.
Yeah, and it works. I mean, a lot of what made DiBiase work was he had the look, he had the charisma, like we've always been saying for these people that we've added on this list. He had all the tools, and he was always at the top, but never was the top.
For a multitude of reasons. I think there was some other reason, like he didn't want the title at some point, too, which surprised me.
I think Hogan didn't want to drop the belt to him.
When in doubt, we go to Hogan in those late '80s.
Yeah,
ones.
it's usually Hogan.
Yeah.
And I hate to bash Hogan because he transcended wrestling.
Yes, yeah.
Even look at WrestleMania. All right, look at WrestleMania. What was it, 9? The one that was in Caesar's Palace,
where he beat Dibiase and Beefcake.
No,
Dibiase and IRS.
No, didn't Money Inc. beat them? Only for Hogan to go on and win the belt that night.
Oh, they got disqualified. Yeah, they disqualified loss. I forgot about that.
For whatever reason,
stupid.
Hogan takes the loss, only to become WWE champion at the end of the night for whatever reason, which kind of cops out the loss of that night.
So let's just appreciate DiBiase for what he is. The ultimate heels. The ultimate money.
He was the ultimate heel of that late '80s period. That he wasn't just a bad guy to be a bad guy. He was a bad guy because he legit was better than you.
Yes.
He flaunted it to every aspect of the game, and he could back it up too. He could wrestle. He could talk. He had the look. He had the beard. He had the money. He had a belt he could afford to make himself because you know what? If he couldn't win the belt, he was still a champion.
Yeah, exactly. That was a solid belt. It was
guys,
a lot of money.
That's Ted DiBiase in a nutshell. A man who should have been WWE champion probably multiple times. And, leave your comments what you think of the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, below. Like the video. Check out the rest of this series of what is right now just episode 1, 2, and this is 3. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, see ya.
See you later.